Hello, good morning. Welcome to Isen summer course. My name is Fernando Nogales. I'm currently Deputy Director General for Northern Europe at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we are going to go through the bilateral relations between Spain and the US. So first, I will do a short historical survey, and then I will concentrate on what are the main pillars of the relationship, and then I will finish with the challenges for the relationship in the next in the coming future. So let's begin. So one of the important things of the relationship is that this bilateral relationship is based on centuries of a common legacy. Actually, the number of years that Spain was present in what is currently the territory of the US is actually larger than the number of years the US has been independent. This is a shared legacy, and the present was important not only in terms of time, but also in terms of physical presence. And then you can see that the Spanish presence can be felt throughout a large chunk of the US territory, and there are many names of places, streets, etc., bear testimony to this presence. The next installment is the war for independence against Britain. Spain was a major financial and operative support to the then rebels, and it is symbolized by the figure of Fernando de Galvez, who was instrumental in diverting attention from British troops in the southeast, and particularly when he took over the siege of Pensacola. Fernando de Galvez is one of the very few foreign citizens who have received the highest distinction of the US medal, and his portrait is hanging now in the House of Representatives.
He knows what's wrong with every copy of the Inquirer since I took over. Read the cable.
Girls delightful in Cuba, stop. Could send you prose poems about scenery, but don't feel right spending your money. Stop. There is no war in Cuba. Signed, Wheeler. Any answer?
Yes, dear Wheeler, you provide the prose poems. I'll provide the war.
That's
Well, this is the next stage is the war for the independence of Cuba. The expansion of the U.S. as a regional power meant a confrontation with Spain that was one of the first instances where contemporary media were a major element in the war against Spain. The figure of Pulitzer that was then turned by Orson Welles in Citizen Kane. We have seen an extract of Citizen Kane. For Spain, it was a major, in contemporary Spain, it's called the disaster, because that was the last piece of the empire, led to a major crisis of conscience inside Spain. Fast forward 50 years. In the meantime, there were two world wars. Spain was not involved in the two world wars. Neither was it involved in the recovery of the Marshall Plan, because during the Second World War, Spain was supported of the Nazi dictatorship, and the US government decided that Spain was not worthy of receiving the funds for the recovery of Europe. Spain was excluded of the international order to a large extent. We didn't become members of the UN until 1955, and here in the photo we see General Eisenhower that is receiving in Spain by General Franco, who is extremely happy about that. And in the middle there is Vernon Walter, a very famous general, later ambassador to Germany, and who was instrumental in this rapprochement between the two regimes. Spain felt at the time, 4 years ago, Spain had joined the UN. Spain has Franco felt at the time that the dark times of being excluded from the war were over.
El rey va a hablar en inglés.
Members of the Congress, it is my great privilege
Miembros del Congreso, es mi
and I
gran
deem it
privilegio
a high honor
y un alto honor
to present to you the
presentar
sovereign leader
a ustedes
of a great and friendly nation,
al soberano de una gran nación
His
amiga,
Majesty
Su Majestad
Juan Carlos
Juan
I,
Carlos I,
the King of Spain.
Rey de España. La traducción que haré para todos ustedes será simultánea. Pido perdón de forma anticipada por
Well, these are images from June 1976. The very young king came to the US and delivered a major speech where he presented how he planned for the Spanish transition to democracy. It was a major surprise to the government back in Spain, who was not apprised of the content of the speech. 1 week later, the then prime minister, who the king had inherited from the dictator, was dismissed, and there began the transition to democracy. The king chose Washington to deliver a speech between a joint session of Congress to express his commitment not only to Spain becoming a fully fledged democracy, but also a fully fledged member of the Western Alliance. Then the next stage is 2004. An ever-increasing wave of ties, and then the next stage is 2004. We had a spat with Marruecos for a small island next to the coast of Marruecos of Spanish origin, and the incident was solved thanks to US mediation, particularly General Colin Powell. At the time, he was Secretary of State of the US. This it also was important at the time. There was a very close alliance between the then government of Aznar, moderate right of center, and President Bush, and the image says that Bush offered Aznar help against ETA. ETA was a major terrorist group that was one of the most important terrorist groups in Europe, and the help from the US was instrumental in particularly busting the communication of the terrorist group, and it was the very first time that in the Western world a terrorist group was defeated using peaceful means, particularly law enforcement, intelligence, etc. And Aznar debunked the myth that there was no possibility of defeating a domestic terrorist group, and he was extremely grateful for this alliance. There followed that alliance translated in Aznar, Bush, and Blair being seen as major allies, and another image where Aznar can be seen in the ranch of the Bush family in Texas, sitting next to the great leaders of the world. We can see Japan, Germany, France, and the US. So he was recognized as a peer among those leaders. Well, the downside of that was 2003, after the 9/11, and there came the decision by the US government to invade Iraq. It was an extremely controversial decision at the time, with huge domestic repercussion, and it manifested in the military parade in October 12 in Spain. This is our national holiday. And then you can see at the right bottom corner of the image the leader of the opposition, Mr. Zapatero, who chose not to stand to greet the passage of the US troops. He opted to remain seated in protest to the Iraq invasion. And that meant that when he became prime minister, there followed a very long a period of 4 years during which Spain was practically shut out of dialogue with the U.S. government, then led by President Bush. There came the Obama presidency, and in 1 year, the relationship was very quickly re-established, and we can see, in the image, the very close rapport that installed between the then Prince King, now King Philip VI, and President Obama. And then finally, we see in this picture, Prime Minister Rajoy is sitting at the session of the G20. It was thanks to U.S. help that Spain got the status of a permanent guest to the G20 group of countries, which is the apex of our diplomatic achievement. Well, so once we have done this short historical survey, let's examine the current relationship. Well, to begin with, Spain has a network of consulates in the U.S. that is very similar to the one that have other countries like France, the UK, or Germany. The difference being that we are the only country that have a general consulate in Puerto Rico because of our historical links to the island, and we don't have, as a contrast, we don't have a general consulate in Atlanta, which is a major economic hub. Another pillar of the dimension are the high-level contacts. There you have the visit that King Philip VI paid to the U.S. He visited Florida, he visited Texas, and he was received at the White House. It was planned before the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. It was foreseen that King Philip could visit the U.S. in April because he was invited by President Trump to pay a state visit to the U.S. It was only the third major leader in the world that would have paid such a visit to the U.S. And this photo bears testimony to the closeness of those high-level contacts. Another major dimension of the relationship is the military. On a regular basis, so you have an image of a battle group at the center, a U.S. carrier, and one of the frigates that is flanking the U.S. carrier is Spanish vessel. This kind of situation happen as a regular basis, and this is actually Spain is one of the major provider of major makers of vessels around the world. And there in this picture you can see the Spanish bases where the U.S. have troops and equipment in Spain. The two major bases are the one at the southwest of Spain, both Rota, which is a naval base, and Morón, which is an air base. The U.S. are currently stationing up to 3,000 troops in Spain, and if I quote the major defense dignitaries of the U.S., the bases of Rota and Morón are the pillar of the capability of the U.S. to project force both in the European continent, but also in the Middle East and Africa. The base in Morón is used by the US to station up to 1,000 troops who have the possibility of projecting force in case of a crisis erupting in Africa. Well, and this is important, another dimension of this stationing of troops is that the 4 destroyers that are based in Rota are part of the Aegis class, and this part of the anti-missile shield that prevent missiles being fired either from Iran or from Russia towards the European continent. And this system has also other bases, both in Poland and Romania, and a central node for communication in the Rastein base in Germany. Well, another dimension of the bilateral relationship that is particularly important is law enforcement. This picture shows an anti-jihadist operation being carried out in Spain, and Spain and the US share every day a lot of intelligence information that has led to major operation over the years, and that has made that Spain is one of the countries leading the law enforcement fight against Islamic terrorism. This is a cooperation that is all across the board and includes also something that the US doesn't have, is the possibility anti-radicalization action in Spanish prison. I mean, this is a dimension that the US doesn't, for the time being, doesn't apply. But just to give you an indication, the US embassy in Madrid every year finances a seminar on this very same topic, because they are aware of how important this dimension is to cover the whole gamut of law enforcement action against terrorism for Spain, for Europe, and for the Western world. Well, let's come to another, probably now the most important dimension of the bilateral relationship is the economic dimension. There you have an image of Zara in the Fifth Avenue in the US, or you have now a high-speed train. Spanish companies are building, are operating high-speed trains, not only in Texas, in California, and this is a major element into what is the present and the future of the U.S. And then you have Grifols. Grifols is a company that serves blood derivatives, and it is a testimony to the presence of the most advanced companies. Spanish companies in Spain are also present in the US. So let's go to the figures. Well, so the United States is actually the main commercial investment partner outside the EU for Spain. Is our 6th client, and the first client outside the EU is our 5th supplier, the second supplier outside the EU after China. But it is the first investor in Spain, and the US is also the first destination of Spain foreign and direct investment. And this is a dimension that has grown exponentially in the last year. The Spanish exports have grown an average of 9% per year in the last decade. It means that they have expanded far beyond what is the remarkable expansion of Spanish exports to the world. And the second factor is probably even more remarkable, because the number of companies that now are operating on a regular basis with the US have increased almost threefold, from 13,000 in 2010 to more than 31,000 in 2018. So it means an increase of 130%. But if the expansion in export is remarkable, the expansion in investment is even more remarkable and has increased 2021% over the past year, which is an average of 13.5%. And it is more remarkable because an investment means that there is a very solid relationship of trust and supporting this relationship is a bet on the future of each other economy. Well, you have the breakdown of the different products that cover the bilateral relationship. Much of the exports are what is called intra-industrial product, which bears testimony to how close the supply chains are. Well, you have here the figure who are in constant expansion. Well, and then investment. Spain is now currently the 12th largest and one of the fastest growing investors in the US, and our investment stock is truly remarkable. Now, Spanish companies in the US employ over 100,000 US workers, which is something truly remarkable and is expanding. But equally important is how US companies are investing in Spain. You cannot understand the current Spanish economic boom and without the presence of US companies that are so closely integrated into the Spanish large economic fabric that sometimes they are not considered even foreign companies. Another dimension of that is how the two countries, the US and Spain, are one of the most important investors in the Latin American countries. Very often, Spanish and US companies are competitors, and sometimes they work together, and they have a major interest, a major stake in the stability and the prosperity of the American continent. Another element of the dimension is, of course, the cultural and linguistic element. Well, Spanish is the second most widely spoken language in the US. Up to more than 40 million people speak Spanish in the US, and now the US is actually the second largest country where Spanish is spoken, and Spain has a major investment in Spanish tuition. Up to 2,000 Spanish teachers teach Spanish on a regular basis in Spain in the public system, not only in the secondary school, but also in the universities, and this is something that we cater to increasingly because there is an increasing demand to do so.
Somos diversos, dispares, vivimos en diferentes países, pero tenemos algo en común, nos entendemos, hablamos, escribimos, pensamos, programamos y sentimos en español. Somos más de 570 millones de hablantes, más de 500 millones de oportunidades, de puertas abiertas a la innovación. Más de 500 millones de historias individuales que conforman una gran historia común. Hace 5 siglos, las lenguas peninsulares fueron pioneras en dar la vuelta al mundo. Hoy son el vínculo de una comunidad que trasciende mares y continentes. El español nunca duerme, se emplea a todas horas en todas partes. Es la tercera lengua más utilizada en Internet y la segunda en las redes sociales. El español nos acerca, es la expresión de una cultura y unos valores compartidos para los que no existen distancias ni fronteras. El español es la llave del futuro, es la esencia de la marca España, es la herramienta para seguir escribiendo la historia, la ciencia y la cultura. Por eso, innovamos en español y desde España. El 76% de los hogares en nuestro país tiene acceso a banda ancha ultra rápida. Contamos con la mayor red de fibra óptica de Europa y la tercera más grande del mundo. Además, estamos enseñando el español a las máquinas. Impulsamos las tecnologías de lenguaje para que las aplicaciones y los sistemas estén al servicio de todas las personas en nuestro idioma. Estamos a la cabeza en la aventura hacia el mundo digital, como una vez lo estuvimos hacia el nuevo mundo. Alrededor del planeta, nuestra milenaria lengua nos hermana en una poderosa comunidad de hispanohablantes, que se expande para convertirse en una expresión de crecimiento. Porque el futuro en español es imparable y en 30 años será la lengua de más de 700 millones de personas. La era digital se está escribiendo en español, nuestro legado común. El español, lengua global.
Well, this is a promotional video that was manufactured by my ministry and talks about the Spanish as a major element for progress. And well, there were data that are important. I mean, the Spanish is not only a language for culture; it's also a language that is important in the social network. It was the second language spoken through the social networks. It is one of the major languages for science, and this is something that in how we project to the world is particularly important. We can harness both the past culture, but also Spanish as an instrument for science and for advancement. And it's also important because we have invested hugely in optical fiber and advanced technologies. Well, this is also well, you have here a picture of Home Depot with I said it before. More than 40 million Spanish speakers live in the U.S. and the U.S. is the second largest country of Spanish speakers in the world. First come Mexico, and then come the U.S. and Spain is only the third country of Spanish speakers. Our challenge is that the mastering of Spanish increases and the proficiency of Spanish by the U.S. speakers increases, so that it becomes not only a reality in-house, but also translates into the culture and to everyday business. Well, and then another dimension that is also particularly important is the Fulbright scholarships. The Fulbright scholarships, since the program was operating in Spain in 1958, has provided scholarships to one of the best and brightest in Spain. On the left-hand side, you have now the current Vice President, High Representative of the European Union for common foreign and defense and foreign policy, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Borrell. He was a Fulbright scholar in Stanford. At the time, he was an engineer. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you have Mr. Solana, who was also a foreign minister of Spain, but later became Secretary General of NATO, and then became the very first High Representative of the EU for foreign policy. Both are Fulbright scholars. The previous Spanish government was the government with the greatest number of Fulbright scholars in the history of Spain. And Fulbright has also been instrumental in bringing thousands of US scholars to Spain. Spain is one of the favorite destinations not only to scholars but also to US university students when they travel abroad. Only the UK and Italy are ahead of Spain in attracting US students to our universities. Well, this is another dimension, is sport, well, with Pau Gasol and now deceased Kobe Bryant, where they were one of when they won 2 NBA championships, which this image wants to symbolize how the civil society, the Spanish civil society, is ever more integrated in the U.S. Civil society. Probably Gasol, he's going to retire soon, most probably, and he will retire in the U.S. and he will become in the future a very important figure of U.S. Society, but he's not alone. We have people like the chef Jose Andres or the cardiologist Dr. Fuster, and we can name very many Spanish figures who are now having a high profile in the U.S. Well, and this is a picture of then Foreign Minister Borrell in Jerez in November 2018. He was delivering remarks at the opening of the forum. Since 1997, we have held every year a meeting of the civil societies of both Spain and the US, and the contacts between the civil societies, the companies are probably in the avant-garde of what is currently the relationship. We were supposed to organize in Bilbao in November the 25th Forum of the Civil Society, but because of the pandemic, it has been decided to postpone it. It is, and I say that this is a major element of the relationship because usually one of the challenges for the civil servants is to be up to the challenge of what the civil societies are discovering. They are new fields where this cooperation takes place, and this is something that we have to keep up to. Well, and what is the environment that we are operating in? Well, this is Spain is a major transatlantic partner, but this bilateral relationship doesn't operate in isolation, and particularly what now we see, we live in an unstable world. Ambassador Rupert has explained how he sees the current international scene, and probably what the major element that will define the relationship in the future, as much as the transatlantic relationship between all the European partners and the US, is the presence of Russia as a revisionist power, but most particularly China, and the challenge that China represents. It is not only economic. We have seen throughout the pandemic, but that it is also a challenge, has a military and a political, but also a disinformation dimension, and this is a challenge that will define how the US will operate in the future, and of course will have a major impact as far as the bilateral relationship is concerned in fields like, for example, how we develop 5G technologies. Well, we have also other revisionist power that will influence the relationship. We have Iran, Syria. If you recall, the summer of 2015, The war in Syria had a major spillover effect with a huge wave of immigration coming to the European shores, and the instability around Europe, particularly in the east and in the south, will have major implications for the prosperity of Europe and Spain, and will be they are always at the agenda in bilateral relationship. And then finally we have Korea, the threat that nuclear regimes pose to both the US and Spain. So what are our challenges? What are the challenges for Spain to develop the bilateral relationship? Well, so now on the first one is currently the relationship. The President Trump is very unpopular, 2002, but I think it's very important to underline that whereas President Trump is very unpopular, the number of people who consider the US a good ally is now currently as the highest, 64% according to the latest survey, and this is a figure that has increased steadily over the last year, and is not influenced by temporary factors. So this trend keeps growing because of the influence of the economic investment, cultural influence, etc. So this is so to keep up to this factor is extremely important. Another dimension is that, and this is something that in the last weeks has been extremely important, how do we project, do we present our common legacy, and as something that is considered as a major shared past that has been beneficial for both countries. And the challenge is to explain it, not in sense as a genocide, but to explain according to the philosophical categories that Cristobal Colon and the colonizers used to use at the time. Particularly because in Spain it has become the toppling of statues in commemorating Colón and other figures in the US has become also a domestic factor in the political scene in Spain, and the challenge is for us and the US authorities to present a narrative that is acceptable to both the US and the Spanish public. This is one of the major endeavors of our embassy, our consulates in the US, and we are partnering with many civil society organizations within the US in order to promote this manifestation of our common past. Well, this is a picture of Brussels, of Madrid, 1995, when then President Clinton and then Prime Minister González and President of the European Commission Van der Broek signed the new transatlantic agenda. The bilateral relationship cannot be understood in isolation. It has to be understood within the framework of the transatlantic agenda. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we conceive the transatlantic agenda as the nucleus of a larger effort, what is called the international liberal order, and it has proved to be the greatest effort to provide prosperity and freedom for a great number of countries around the world. And also the challenge, you have seen Spanish troops. This is an image of Spanish troops in Iraq. Spanish troops are currently operating together with the US troops in countries like Iraq. Our Patriot missile operation in Turkey is a key element in the Western defense. Or Spain, there is a contingent of more than 300 Spanish soldiers in Latvia as far as the reinforced program of NATO, reinforced forward presence in Latvia against the Russian threat. How do you integrate the work of our two military will be a major element of the relationship in the future. And then again, the very same image that we used before, how do our fleets operate together, and probably in the future, our frigates will be part of U.S. battle groups operating not only in areas that are close to Spain, such as the Mediterranean, the Atlantic Ocean, or Africa, but they will also operate in areas where they use not to operate as a regular basis, like the Middle East, the Indian Ocean, but also the South China Sea. This is something that in the future will become ever more common, but will have to be explained to the public. Well, so this final image means that there is a long road ahead of us. This is a challenge, but also it's a very promising prospect for our bilateral relationship. With hindsight, it is remarkable that the expansion of the bilateral relationship in the last 20 years, how the bilateral relation has covered an ever-increasing number of dimensions. There is a dimension that is currently important, but has a lot of promise, is the technical and scientific dimension, and this is something that we will work on a daily basis to improve. Thank you very much.